In this session, we'll dive deeper into the importance of using standardized terms in clinical data management. Previously, we discussed the value of adopting data standards, particularly how they facilitate more efficient data exchange. Today, we'll explore some of the key concepts that underlie the development of these standards and examine how they can be applied in practice. Additionally, we'll look at how you can further explore these standards using online platforms dedicated to medical informatics. The role of data standards in clinical data management. Standards are essential in all stages of the data management pipeline. From data collection and storage to retrieval and analysis, standards provide a structured approach that ensures consistency, accuracy, and interoperability. Without standards, data becomes fragmented, making it difficult to extract meaningful insights or share information across different systems. Imagine you're working with a large database of clinical cases, say trauma patients. If the medical staff records data like broken left shin or fractured right femur without using standardized terms, how would you make sense of this data? Each description is subjective, and extracting useful insights would require manual interpretation. However, if these terms were standardized using a controlled terminology, such as defining a broken ankle with a specific code, the data would be much easier to analyze at scale, facilitating better research and patient care. Key terminology concepts. Let's begin by defining some important terms in the context of clinical data management terminology. This refers to a set of terms used in a specific field, with clearly defined meanings. For instance, in medical terminology, we have terms like fracture or diabetes that carry precise meanings in the clinical context. Vocabulary. This is essentially a dictionary of terms containing definitions from one or more fields. A comprehensive vocabulary allows different systems and professionals to understand and interpret the same set of terms uniformly. Nomenclature, a structured system of naming, often governed by predefined rules. For example, the Loeing system, logical observation, identifiers. Names and codes assigns unique codes to lab tests and clinical observations, making it easier to categorize and share data across systems. Why standardized terminologies matter. A standardized terminology serves several critical purposes. It enables consistent data capture and analysis. It supports semantic interoperability, ensuring that the meaning of data remains consistent when shared across different systems. It reduces ambiguity, improving both the quality and usability of the data. For example, when recording a diagnosis, using a term like type 2 diabetes rather than just diabetes ensures that the meaning is precise. This makes it easier for different systems to interpret the data and for researchers to track specific conditions accurately. Levels of granularity and hierarchy in medical terminology. When dealing with clinical data, it's important to consider the granularity of terms. Granularity refers to the level of detail or specificity in a concept. For example, diabetes is less granular than type 2 diabetes, which is a more specific term. In clinical standards, multiple levels of granularity are often required to represent complex information accurately. In addition to granularity, hierarchies are used to organize terms. For instance, you might have a broad category like fractures, with more specific subcategories such as fracture of the left femur or fracture of the right tibia. This hierarchy helps to organize terms in a way that reflects the relationships between them, making it easier to find the right data. Structured and formal terminology. For a terminology to be useful, it must have a formal, structured approach. This means that terms must have unique identifiers to avoid confusion, defined relationships between concepts to enable accurate data retrieval, and consistent naming conventions to ensure clarity and avoid redundancy. An example of this is SNOME-CT, which stands for Systematized Nomenclature of Medicine Clinical Terms. SNOME-CT is a highly structured and computer-processable terminology. It organizes medical terms into hierarchical categories, such as diseases, symptoms, and treatments, allowing clinical systems to better understand and process data. Formal definitions and concept permanence. A well-designed terminology system should ensure that once a concept is defined, its meaning remains unchanged over time. While terms may evolve, the underlying concept must remain the same to ensure consistency in data interpretation. This is known as concept permanence. For example, if the term heart attack is defined within a terminology system, the meaning of this term should remain constant, even if the name changes to something like acute myocardial infarction. The idea is to keep the definition consistent to maintain accuracy across various uses of the term. Redundancy and synonymy. In a well-developed terminology, redundancy is kept to a minimum, but synonymy is sometimes allowed. Synonymy refers to the use of different terms for the same concept. This is useful in clinical practice because different medical professionals might refer to the same condition by different names. For example, heart attack and myocardial infarction are synonymous, but both refer to the same condition. By allowing synonyms, a system can capture all the relevant terms that might be used in practice without introducing confusion. Pre-coordination versus post-coordination. Another important distinction in clinical terminologies is between pre-coordination and post-coordination. Pre-coordination involves defining terms at the most detailed level of granularity up front. For example, instead of just recording fracture, you would have separate terms for left femur fracture and right tibia fracture. Post-coordination allows you to combine simpler terms to create more complex concepts. For example, left femur and fracture can be combined to represent a left femur fracture when needed. While pre-coordination simplifies data collection by having distinct terms for each concept, post-coordination offers more flexibility by allowing different combinations of terms to represent complex conditions. Interoperability and standardization. For data to be useful across different systems, it must be interoperable. There are two types of interoperability to consider. Syntactic interoperability ensures that data is structured correctly and can be read by other systems. Semantic interoperability ensures that the meaning of the data remains consistent and understood across different systems. A standardized terminology helps achieve both forms of interoperability, making it possible for different systems to exchange data seamlessly while preserving its meaning. Selecting the right standard. Choosing the right standard depends on several factors. Purpose of the data. Are you using the data for a clinical trial, regulatory submission, or something else? Source of the data. Is the data coming from lab systems, electronic health records, or patient-reported outcomes? Complexity of the data. Some standards are more complex and may require specialized knowledge to implement, while others are simpler and more suited to smaller-scale studies. For example, if you're working with data from multiple clinical trials, you might use standards like CDISC, which provides a comprehensive suite of standards for clinical research. These include CDISC, which defines a minimum set of data elements for clinical data collection. SDTM, a model used for tabulating and submitting study data to regulatory agencies. And ADM, a model for statistical analysis of clinical trial data. Other standards like LOINC and ICD may be more appropriate for specific types of clinical data, such as lab results or disease coding. In summary, adopting controlled medical terminologies is essential for managing clinical data effectively. These terminologies provide a structured approach to data capture, enhance data consistency, and improve interoperability across systems. Whether you're working with large-scale data sets, designing databases for clinical trials, or working with clinical records, understanding and applying the right terminology standards will enable you to work more efficiently, improve data quality, and support better decision-making in healthcare. As we progress through this course, we'll explore several key clinical standards in greater detail, and you'll have the opportunity to explore these concepts further through the interactive learning materials available.